Okay, we're live. Here we go. Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience while we troubleshoot. You know, there's always like something going on with the technologies, especially when you're getting ready to crowdcast to 100 and some odd people. But we're here now, and we're really excited to dig into this with you guys. You're here for how to launch when investors ain't writing checks. I am excited to talk to you about this today, as well as Francesca. My name is Aniyia Williams, by the way. So everyone, we're here now, starting a little bit late, but we're gonna catch up. It's gonna be great. So let's just like get focused, get into our zone, stick around to the very end, and we'll have a special bonus for you. And let's do this.
Yes. Let's do it. I am sorry, technology, it was on my end. That was not contributing, so, but we're ready now.
We are ready. You know you are in the right place if you're just getting started, you're at idea stage, you have an idea for something that you want to build, or even better, you have a problem that you know you want to solve, and you need a blueprint for how to get it out in the world. You are in the right place if you have been trying to fundraise and coming up empty-handed, if you're tired of the VC pitching rat race, if you're tired of spending hours and hours combing through LinkedIn connections, trying to get warm intros, pitching meeting after meeting, and feeling like people don't get it, they don't see the potential that you're putting in front of them. You are in the right place if you have been building and you've hit a snag somewhere along the way, and you need to assess and tune up what you're doing. I'm gonna also add one more in here. If you're just feeling lonely on the entrepreneurship journey and you're trying to find your tribe and find people who will understand you and understand what you've been going through and support you, we are here. We are here for you, and we are gonna get into it. So what we're gonna cover today is we're gonna tell you who we are. We'll talk a little bit about who we are, and so you guys are all starting at the same level here. And we're going to talk about the number one lie surrounding startups, the number one killer of businesses. Sounds so intense. And also how to increase your odds of winning, how to combat that number one killer of business, and how we can help you. And all of this is in the context of, many of us know that the founders that we've been helping, you'll hear a little bit more about our work, come to us after they have gotten really frustrated with trying to raise capital. They want to launch their startups, they're hitting a snag, and they want to bootstrap, or they really have no other option but to bootstrap. And that brings us here. And so, like I said, we're going to tell you about who we are, what we do. We're going to talk about how Silicon Valley culture has us all tripping. Francesca and I are going to tell you what we see as our number one myth about building startups. And obviously it's related to getting funding. And then last but not least, like I said, we're going to talk about how we can help you. If you're a founder who's just getting started, if you're frustrated, if you've stalled out, we're gonna be here for you, and we're gonna talk about that stuff. So is everybody with me? If you are with me, let me see you type hello in the chat. Hello. Hello. Anybody there? Oh, we've already bored them. Okay. All right. Oh, there we go. There we go. They're coming in. Okay. So who are we? Hopefully by the end of this webinar, we will be your new friends. Hey, regardless of how you found us, maybe you joined our mailing list, like maybe you came to one of our events. Either way, like you're here now, and you may or may not know who we are, but you're about to find out. Our organization is called Black and Brown Founders. We help Black and Latinx people start tech businesses. And usually that is from the lens of how do you do that with modest resources? What happens if you want to build something and you never see a dollar of investment money? Our organization exists to help founders generate revenue so that they can feel in control of their lives, so they can help their families, so they can build wealth. Can I see some hands if you want to like do one of those things? Like I know there's a little emoji button in the lower right corner. Let me see some hands if that's you. And actually, before I get into that, I do want to take a quick little sidebar. If you guys have never used Crowdcast before, let me tell you just a little bit about the specific functionality of ask a question. If you look at the bottom bar and you see ask a question, you can actually click on that. You could type a question in there as we are going along, And when we get to the end, we have some time set aside for questions. Hey, I'm loving all the hands. Yes. When we get to the questions, we'll be able to just start from there. You can upvote questions as well, and we can even mark parts of the recording to show that this is when we answered said question. So then if you want to go back and watch this again, because you're definitely going to want to go back and watch this again, you'll know exactly where the answer to that question was. So back to what I was saying, Black and Brown founders, I'm loving all the hands up in here. So if this is what you want, you're willing to do the hard work to get it, we are committed to helping you succeed. We know that starting from square one can be an overwhelming task. It's not clear how to get from point A to point B. There's a list of classic mistakes that people make, which can be extremely costly. And in addition to getting you the receipts that you need as an entrepreneur, we will hold you accountable while also supporting you. Like getting a warm hug, but also kind of like smack beside the head sometimes too. And long story short, we're here to help you guys make money. Like this is what we want. This is what the mission of our organization is. This is what Francesca and I are personally committed to because of our own passions. So as I said, my name is Aniyia Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Black and Brown Founders. I am also the co-founder of Zebras Unite, former founder of a company called Tinsel, which I'll touch on in a second. I grew up in a family business. My family owned a cosmetology school and 3 hair salons in Philadelphia. Any Philly folks in the house, by the way? Just like, give me like a A in the chat if you're from Philly. But after college, I actually went into fundraising for nonprofits, major gifts fundraising, which is kind of the higher end of getting big checks from people in fundraising. But I've actually spent the last 8 years of my working career in startups and working in tech. And in 2014, I launched my own fashion hardware. Hey, Philly. I launched my own fashion tech company making electronic jewelry for women called Tinsel. And I shut it down earlier this year. And man, did we fail in style. We can get into that later. But we did manage to raise just under $500,000 from investors. So I do have experience with what that entire thing goes. And we did successfully crowdfund as well. We manufactured the world's first audio necklace. I got a patent for our original design. And I learned a lot from the experience, and I bring a lot of that into what I help founders with today. I believe that failure is one of our greatest teachers, and we will also get into that a little bit. But basically, I like to take the best parts of Silicon Valley and you know, because there's definitely some parts that I'd like to throw like right in the garbage, but the best parts of the know-how of Silicon Valley, mix it with traditional business practices and translate that into what's relevant for founders of color. And then we have the fearless Francesca.
So actually, instead of fearless, I'd rather be courageous, Francesca, and we're going to get to that at some point later in the talk. But I am thrilled to be here. I was born and raised in Dominican Republic. So when I see immigrants such as Thames here on the chat, I love it, or people who are from other places or living in other places. I definitely enjoy that part of my work. I grew up in Dominican Republic, also in an entrepreneurial home, like most Dominicans. My parents ran Taekwondo schools throughout the island. What's up, Sylvia? I came to the US, became an engineer. I started my first venture right out of college, building software to track the performance of aircraft engines. Then I figured that corporate world was for the birds, and I started this kind of eclectic career path where I've gone from owning franchises to network marketing. Yes, I was your Mary Kay lady at one point. I continued, learned to do my eye makeup, which is not on today. I continued to do software on the side, either as projects for other people, doing simple things like building a website for someone, or actually trying to do more complex applications. And so at one point in time, it was during network marketing that I realized that what I loved the most was helping people build businesses. And so as much as I run my own and enjoy running my own, the passion and what I feel is my purpose and my calling is really to help other people find that same opportunity to grow and to build a family and a lifestyle of their choice, however they want to do that. And I do this work because I believe that entrepreneurship is a form of activism. And for a lot of us, this is the path to living the life of our dreams. And so I could say a lot more about all that. You want to hear more about franchise ownership? Yeah, don't do it. And so here's the thing, like network marketing, and this is totally bonus content right now, but the same as network marketing, in a franchise, you don't own the product. You own the clients to a certain degree, but what you are is a representative of the brand. And so if you want to do something amazing and you think you can pull it off, you're better off doing it on your own with Black and Brown founders, obviously, and get the systems and methods that are proven without having to pay royalties every year for the rest of your life, and not necessarily benefit from your effort. So we can have more conversations about that over the course of time. But yeah, that's what I learned. That's me.
Okay, so let's get into the good stuff. The number one lesson on science. Okay, so the biggest trick that Silicon Valley ever pulled was convincing the world that they need venture funding. This probably comes as no surprise to you as we're talking about how to launch when investors ain't writing checks. They act like bootstrapping doesn't exist most of the time. I will say this again, slightly differently, which is that the lie surrounding the culture and the practice of building startups is that getting funding from investors is a marker of success. So if I'm being like really crude here, it is to say that like in order to be like successful, you need venture funding. It is not. We do not agree. Your ability to make money with a profit margin at the end, however, is very critical, very important, and kind of the whole point. So, for me, I'm going to give you guys a little personal story here. Like for me, like I was definitely drinking the Kool-Aid at the beginning of my startup journey, particularly when I first started my company Tinsel. I told you guys about. I bought into the hype that if I was like this amazing person who could build out this awesome idea, in this case, a necklace that transformed into headphones, I would be able to raise all the money that I needed to do it. And I would just like shoot off into like space, like a rocket ship. And I knew that funding was something that was hard to get, but I thought I would be the exception. And so like, you guys might be thinking something similar. And I want to restate that like you are special. Like, yes, Terrell, Paris, Eric, Brittany, those are the names I see. Sylvia, you are special. But when it comes to getting investor money, the odds are just not in your favor. Let's play a little game of Did You Know? So how many people of you have like thought about or tried to pitch investors for funding? Like put some dollar signs in the chat if you have thought about or tried to pitch investors for funding. Sidebar, if you guys, I noticed you guys are talking about some lagging. If you're lagging, try refreshing the browser. I've heard that helps for people sometimes. All right, we got some dollar signs in there. Okay, so did you know that less than 1% of all American businesses are funded by angels and VCs? So that includes like the ever popular white dude owned businesses too. Less than 1% of all American businesses are funded by angels and VC, right? And that less than 2% of those businesses have Black or Latinx founders, right? So like many people know how fundraising can be, right? But most of us think that we were going to be oh my God, I can't say this right. But many people know how hard fundraising can be, but many of them also believe that they will be the exception. So now we're talking about like in this group, assuming that most of you are Black and or Latinx people, that like of that 1% getting that kind of money, 2% of that smaller portion is going to people who look like us, right? Statistically. So all of that said, like, let's just say you beat the odds, right? Like, let's say you get to be one of those lucky people in the rarefied air who get a yes and they get a check. Go you, killing it. Sure,
So,
okay.
Aniyia, I want to put that in perspective.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to say that that number turns out to be around 5 people or less per year. So if you and 3 of your friends each have a business, one of you, maybe, if you are one of the top 5, but you would need to be the same or better than everybody else on deck. And we're going to talk about what that means later, but just so you understand, it's 5 people we're talking about.
Yeah, we're really trying to drive home the numbers here, the stats around this, which is like, but let's like say pie in the sky scenario happens, right? Like you get investment, like it's popping. Let's talk about what that means and what happens after that, right? So we already said that less than 1% of all American businesses are funded by angels and VCs, right? Well, we also know of all the businesses that get funded by VCs, only 1% of them, typically, more or less, become unicorns. And if you guys aren't familiar with unicorns are, that basically is to say $1 billion business, which is kind of the goal of like what happens when you take venture funding. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but the key point is that 70% of those businesses fail. So even when you become the exception of the exception, the odds are still statistically that 70% of you are going to fail. And so, this is a stat that I got from, there's a CB Insights report. If you guys are interested in checking it out, I can probably find the link and send that at the end when we're in the Q&A section. But like, we're talking about a study that was looking at companies that had, usually around 20 months after raising their first round of financing, and in average, I believe, have raised $1.3 million of funding. That 70% of those companies failed. So all we're saying is that statistically, it is really difficult. And also, if you do it, it still doesn't necessarily guarantee success. I know that one of the common patterns that we hear when we're working with founders is that the obstacle that is keeping someone from doing what they are trying to do is the fact that they don't have funding. We are going to tell you that that's bullshit. So on the flip side, businesses that are tracked by the SBA, like small businesses, this is American businesses. I know we have an international audience, so bear with us because we're using, primarily American stats here. But roughly 50% of those businesses fail. So that's not to say it's like foolproof, right? Like half of people are still going out of business within the first 5 years of operating, but the odds are a little bit better, right? And that is also people who get to maintain control and ownership of their things. So the question that I would ask is, what are the odds that you prefer, right? And we're actually even going to get into talking about that number one reason why those businesses fail in just a second. But before we do that, I really want to spend a little bit more time talking about why that venture model works the way it does. So I'm going to kind of just jump really quickly into a quick primer on venture capital. Why is this a thing, right? So this is all about making money. Like investors have investors called LPs or limited partners. And these investors, the ones that you have probably been trying to get in front of, talk to, pitch, get checks from, they have people that they have to make money for. Typically, the expectation is that they're going to return 3x what those people have given to them, right? And those people who are the investors typically are in this group of people. Like, where does that money come from? Pension funds, endowments, banks, insurance companies, sometimes really, really rich people. If you're wondering why this whole system exists, it is mostly so that we continue to beat the rate of inflation. I am going to really try not to go in the weeds on economics here, but the gist is that the value of $1 today is not the same as the value of $1 10 years from now, and you have to keep growing your money in order to keep pace or outpace the rate of inflation. And that is why people do things to keep growing money, right? So anyway, the ideal way that this works is that the LP invests into a fund. The fund is invested into startups. The startups have a huge exit, although we know that most of them fail. They're expecting that 1 or 2 of them is going to make it, and they're going to have really, really big exits, $1 billion or more, either through an acquisition, which is actually the more common way, or through an IPO, which is when, you go publicly traded on the stock market, the NASDAQ or any of that stuff, right? like Slack just IPO'd, or like Netflix, or like ExxonMobil. These are Apple, like these are Google, all publicly traded companies. And then when that happens, everybody makes money. That's kind of the way it works, right? So basically, investors buy a piece of your business at a cheap price. As a result, you give up some ownership and control over your company. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then later, an exit happens, which we said is like an IPO or an acquisition typically. And that is supposed to return 10x of the investment to the investors, who then, by association, are supposed to return at least 3x or more of what they were given from their investors to them, right? And so this really, like I said, only works out when investors are seeing those $1 billion+ returns, and they count on most businesses not making them. One or two businesses, typically, like the way the model works, like have to compensate for the whole portfolio. And here's the thing about that, is that, fun fact, there is a 0.6% chance of building a $1 billion company. If you heard that, can you just like type 0.000? Wait, sorry, I missed one. 0.6. Can you type that in the chat? I just want to make sure y'all are still here and still alive and still breathing, even if there is a slight delay. Because the reality of it is, there we go. The reality of it is that $1 billion exits are hella hard, right? Like the path to $1 billion+ within 10 years or less can result in some real craziness, right? Like VC-backed startups, they easily become environments for careless behavior, for exploitation, for questionable morals at best. Decisions get made that can be really bad for the business, for the industry, for the people that work there. These companies are more likely to extract value from existing communities in harmful ways. If you care about social impact, which I hope you do, because that's part of the reason why the world is going to shit today. Excuse my language. And founders can lose control of over their own companies if they're not performing well, right? So like the message there is that you can get fired from your own company that you started when you cease to have control over that in terms of your ownership stake, which can happen over the course of many rounds. If they are not pleased with the performance of your business. So your dream can kind of get taken and turned into something else that you might not have originally anticipated once you allow other people to also own pieces of your company. And then I also like to just like note another fun fact, which is that it's also possible to sell your startup for $1 billion and make less than founders who sell their startups for like $100 million. But the thing to really know is that a lot of founders take VC money on the promise of what they're going to build before the reality sets in, and they don't often know what they're signing up for. Your great idea might have otherwise worked, but sometimes companies kind of implode when they're forced into a hyper growth mode. Because the takeaway here is that VC is $1 billion or bust game, right? Like it's survival of the fittest. If you're not going to hit your target for the $1 billion, like your investors are going to do what they can to drive it into the ground in an attempt to get you there. It's like an all or nothing type of commitment. So I hope that we have driven that home enough. And now let's talk about what it looks like alternatively. Francesca, can you take it away here?
Absolutely. I'm here biting my lips because you know how excited I get about this. Ultimately, profitability is the goal. Making money is the goal of every business. And until you're making money, you are not actually in business. You're just playing with an idea. Organic growth of a business is the primary method. And we're going to talk about what organic growth means. Just to give you a preview, it's sales. I know. Who would have thought? Like when you are chasing funding from an investor, that becomes your source of income, instead of focusing on actually selling shit and people buying your stuff, right? So fundability is a secondary method only if necessary and when necessary. And there's different types of funding that you can pursue, not only venture capital, right? So yes, you might need funding in order to expand on your manufacturing plants, or so you can hire 100 people or whatever it is that you need to grow, but you're not trying to grow right now, you're trying to launch. So this is not when you get funding from an investor. So that's where we are when it comes to that. So what does profitable mean? Your assets are greater than your liabilities. And now we're going to talk a little bit about profit and loss statement and balance sheet. So hold on to that thought and we'll come back to it in a second. So simply, hold on.
I was going to say, while she's talking, I would like anybody who knows the like assets and liabilities, profit and loss statements, if these are things that are familiar to you, you understand them, give us some exclamation points in the chat while Francesca is talking. Go.
Yes, thank you. Yep. So simply, you're going to have money left over after your expenses and your debts are taken care of, and you'll have money in your pocket, right? Now, I'm glad to see that some people know what these different documents are. That's awesome. So in a profit and loss statement, if you can show the next slide, Aniyia, you're going to have your income, revenue, like a budget that you set up for home, right? You have your sales, maybe borrowed cash or investor cash, and they show up in your income section. In your expenses, you have things like salaries and rents, raw materials, your loan payments, dividends show up in that part of your profit and loss statement, taxes. And at the end, you have profit or loss. Depending on what you're reporting, and this is where I want you guys to get a little savvy, you can show things like earnings before income and tax, or interest and taxes, that's EBIT, right? Or maybe you get super fancy and you start reporting profits that are not really profits because you haven't paid other things. So I want you to understand that there are tricks that Wall Street plays in order to make a company look more profitable than they really are. And so you borrowing cash from a bank or getting $1 million investment from a venture capitalist shows up as top line growth. Yes, they're growing, but did you really grow in users and customers? No. Is your product selling? No. Did you prove your business model? No. None of those things happened. And so the only thing that you have at this point is debt, because the investor actually now owns part of your company and is going to require a return on that investment at point X in time. So it's not payable like a loan is. It's payable in a much more expensive way, because guess what? They can fire you if they don't think that you're doing a good job. So this thing that you owned, now you owe, and it shows up in your expenses as loan payments, for example, dividends that get paid out to stock owners later on after you go public, taxes obviously, and everything else. And that's what affects your bottom line. So when you hear people talk about top line growth versus bottom line growth, this is what they're saying. Okay, your top line is your revenue, and that should be driven by your sales. This stuff is selling like hotcakes. That's what you want as your top line. And then your bottom line is you are doing it in such a way that there is money left over. Okay? That's profitability. Fundability has nothing to do with this, and it has everything to do with a marketing strategy that can make people buy into the idea of getting this stock. And what does that mean? You can look at Uber. Uber has yet to turn a profit, but they just had an initial public offering. What that means is the investors took the company public and opened it up for anybody who wants to buy stock. Those individuals are buying stock at price X, which is potentially 10 times more than the investor originally paid. They make Uber look really, really good, like it has a lot of potential. And people buy stock, the investors make a lot of money, and the owners of the stock now have a stock in their hands that in some months is probably worth nothing, because the company has yet to make profit and they won't have money to pay dividends.
To be clear, the goal is that the stock would increase in value, but I think in Francesca's example, where we don't actually know how Uber is going to become profitable, it's quite possible that it would be worth nothing in the future. So,
just saying. And hopefully I'm wrong, right? It's probably the best example I can think of right now that is relevant of how things can go wrong. Now, obviously, you have companies that have done this very well and have built a solid product and a solid foundation, and they are worth their investment in, I don't know, my weight, which is considerable. So for sure, it can happen, and it can be you. What we're suggesting is that this is the way to build that kind of business, is to focus on profitability first and allow that funder to find you because you're making money. Okay? So here's what you need to do. Build or create a product or service that people actually want. Okay? Sell it for more than it costs you to make. Make a profit. Wash, rinse, repeat. I know I'm making it sound really simple.
That's all you have to do. That's it.
That's it. Go do it. Done. Webinar over.
Really a little more complicated than that.
Clearly. And I'll tell you why. Because the number one killer of businesses, which you guys are about to find out right now, is the thing that we talked earlier about the 50-50 split in the typical American business, right? Not your unicorns, not the venture backed, but any business that starts has a 50-50 chance of making it past year 5. And the reason for that particular type of failure is a lack of product market fit. Okay? The lack of product market fit. So next slide. Okay. Well, maybe we should go back to the other one, Aniyia. Let me see.
Well, what I can do is, like, how about we take a moment here to just kind of explain what is product market fit, right? Like,
yes.
what does product market fit actually entail? And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you can increase your chances of nailing that when you're building your business, right? So these are the things that typically have to be present. And like, if what Francesca just said was the very simplified version of that, right? Like, you have to be, one, solving a problem or relieving a pain for people. First thing. Second thing is that the pain or the problem that you're addressing has to be strong enough that people will pay you money to help them fix it. Second thing. Third thing is that the way you deliver your solution costs them, the way you deliver your solution to them costs you less than they are paying you. And the last one is that there are enough, like, this is number 4, is that there's enough people with this pain point that you can help the world with this problem for as long as possible while, sustaining those costs, right? So if we go back to what Francesca was just saying, we're going to bring this slide back up and say it again. So, like, you have to be solving a problem or relieving a pain for people. You have to have that, make sure that that pain or that problem that you're solving is that people are going to pay you money to fix that. That the way, this is number 3, the way that you deliver that solution costs you less than what they're paying you. And like, an important side note is that, it's probably not going to cost you less in the very beginning. As you refine your offering, typically people have losses in the beginning and then they turn that into the black later. But the numbers have to work out over time, or your business is going to fail. And the fourth thing is that there has to be enough money there have to be enough people to pay you that money. And they have to be like, you have to be able to continue delivering that service that they're paying you for in order to keep your business alive. So the fact that it is sustainable, right? Solving a problem.
So, couple of things. One, if you guys want more on this topic right here, put a plus sign in the chat and we can then give you some more nuggets on product market fit. Let me see. Plus signs. You guys want more? There's one. Okay.
I'm going to answer your question real quick, which is to say that you'll know that you achieve product market fit when you can continue to do that sustainably. Like, if you can continue to repeat that over and over again, like consistently delivering your product and consistently like getting paid more than what it costs you to deliver it, then you achieve product market fit. If you can do that in perpetuity, that is product market fit.
So yeah, let me jump in, Aniyia, in here and give you guys some more nuggets on this topic. Creating a product or service that people actually want is the hardest part of business, period, ever. And so we're not trying to oversimplify by telling you that, oh, that's all you have to do, go do it. No, no, no. What we're saying is that honestly, it's the hardest thing and it's the only thing that anyone in the early stages should be obsessing about. Okay. And so how do you understand if your market wants it? Well, that's what those 4 bullets are. And I'll repeat them, kind of paraphrase them. I know people had some questions on these points. So let me tell you what they are in my words. Okay. The first one is there's actually a problem. Sometimes we think that, I don't know, portable toilets, like everybody should have a portable toilet because I want one. Well, nobody else wants one. And their problem is not the lack of a portable toilet, it's actually toilet paper. I have usually really horrible examples, people, so just bear with me. At least it's not food today, that it's usually food. So, you actually find out that the problem is toilet paper, and portable toilet paper already exists. And so here, boom, you didn't even have to go raise funds to figure out that this is not a viable idea. Okay. That's what we're talking about. You first need to define the problem and agree with your potential customer on what that problem is. The second step is for you to understand that the solution you're providing is something they're willing to pay for, right? Because you might come up with like a gold portable toilet that costs $1 billion and nobody wants it. They want a portable toilet, but not that one. Right? So definitely that would be a chance for you to go back and tweak your offer and figure out what is the solution they're willing to pay for. Okay. The second or third, actually, at this point, the third piece that you need to validate is that it can be manufactured at a cost that you can sustain. Okay. So it has to cost less than what you make it for. Your first prototype of the golden toilet might be gazillion dollars, but once you apply economies of scale, you're able to work within a budget that makes sense. But you have to have an idea of that going in. You can't go into it with some, oh, everybody will love it, and I can sell it for $100 million and everybody be fine. You can't do that. You have to understand the market conditions around the pricing and positioning of your product. Then the fourth one is the market is big enough for the profit margin that is left over to be sufficient for you to run the business and live off of it. Okay, so it's not enough that there is profit at the end. It has to be profitable enough for you to live the life you want and for you to run the business in the way that it needs to run to sustain over time. Okay, so those are the 4 pieces. And I hope that people took notes in ways that make sense to them from the 2 different explanations.
Yeah, if you guys still have questions about what that all means, pop it in the ask a question and we'll get to that at the end. So just to drive home what she said, like at a high level, like that creating that product or service that people really want is the hardest thing to do ever, period. If I'm remembering Francesca's words correct. But there are some things that you can do to increase your odds of succeeding. And that is why we're all here. So now we've done all the doom and gloom stuff. Like, let's talk about the rosy sunny lining around what is possible and why crazy people like us do this anyway. Because most of the things that you can do to increase your odds for success don't cost a ton of money. And we're going to share some of our pro tips on how to build that product or create that product that people want when you have limited runway. All right. So pro tip number 1, use what you got, honey, is double down on what you already have, not on what you're missing. So if you feel like you money is the thing that is keeping you from building your business, you have already lost. I think about it like this. I like to say, that you are the startup, which I'm totally swagger jacking from Arlen Hamilton. She was the first person that said this to me when I was building my first company. She was one of the investors in Tinsel. That you are the startup. And what she meant by this was that everything that got my company to lift off to where it was possible because of what me and my team brought to it. And when I say like, and like what Francesca and I kind of think about when we think about this is that like you have to find the intersection of the problem that you want to solve and your own skill set. So like problem that you want to solve, and then what you can bring to like what knowledge, what skills you have that you can apply to solving this problem. Some people might think about this as like whatever your competitive advantage in some ways. It can be that, it might not be that, but like really it's that there's an alignment between what you're trying to do and what you are equipped to do. And also solving a problem for a community that you are from or have meaningful access to. This is really important, particularly because if you want to sell a product for, if we're talking about franchises, if you want to sell a product for fast food restaurants, and you don't know anyone who works in the fast food industry, you have never worked in the fast food industry, you don't know, like, you don't have any way in to talk to the decision makers who ultimately would be trying to purchase your product in the fast food industry, you may not want to build a product for the fast food industry. This is not to say that it is impossible, but the name of this webinar is How to Launch When Investors Ain't Writing Checks. And so if you are here, you probably cannot afford to throw spaghetti noodles against the wall and see what sticks. You have to work with what you got, right? Solve a problem for a community that you're from or have meaningful access to. The third thing is that if the way that you want to solve that problem requires some intensive financial investment or like some significant amount of approvals or regulations, like drug treatments or something that has to go through like clinical trials forever and a lot of investment, you probably want to try to attack whatever you're setting out to solve as a problem in a different way, right? So just to reiterate, it's the matchup of your skills, your desires, and your capacity that's going to make this work when you're cash strapped. Like funding is not what is keeping you from launching your thing. You are.
Mm-hmm. I want to expand on that, and you just to say one thing. Unless it's like the cure for the next wave of polio or like a rocket that's going to land in Pluto, chances are your idea does not need venture funding to get started. You could potentially build a prototype with $500 or less. Substantially less, as a matter of fact.
So yes, so to say, like, I think thank you for that caveat, Francesca. Like, this is not hashtag not all businesses, but like most businesses, like literally most. We have talked to a lot of founders. This is most of the people that we talk to. So more specifically, it's like, you know, when I say you are the problem, I mean the way that your mind is fixated on your current approach is probably the actual bigger obstacle than funding. So again, to break that down, like use what you got, right? Understand your skills, your desires, your capacity to work on the problem. Think and rethink, maybe rethink how you can achieve an effective solution to this problem with minimal cost, and gain an understanding of what you can produce through customer discovery. Like that is going to touch on what we're going to get into next, but like really, like one of the secret weapons that you can have, like one of the arrows in your quiver, because we like using metaphors here, is like that you need to make sure that you are in the mind of the customer, person you are trying to solve, and convinced to pay you money, that you understand how they think about the problem, how they talk about the problem, how they experience the problem, so that you can give them something that they want to buy. Which brings us to our next pro tip.
Mm-hmm. So the next pro tip is dream big, but start small. And really the goal here is for you to focus on results for your customers and creating strong feedback loops. So strong results for your customer, meaning your product works, your service delivers what it promised, right? So understand and be okay with the fact that your product is not going to be amazing on day one. It's just not going to be everything that you want it to be on day one. That's okay. That's actually a good thing. And I'll explain to you why. You want to compensate for this perceived lack of product amazingness by providing the best results possible and creating that strong feedback loop where the customer is actually telling you along the way exactly what they want, how, when, and where. Okay? The easiest business to build is the one that your customer asks for. If you want your kids to eat at night, ask them what they want for dinner. They might say ice cream, right? But if they want ice cream, and this is the business world, if they want ice cream, you give him ice cream because that's what they want to eat, right? And so instead of you coming up with like the best dinner, see, I'm back to food. It happens every time. Instead of you preparing like the most lavish, I don't know, lobster meal that you can think of, the 5-year-old is telling you, I want chicken nuggets and fries. Right? That's the easiest business to build. It's still hard, but the easiest way to build it is to actually give customers what they're asking for. Most business fail, and as you learned earlier, because there's no market for their stuff, right? So when you're small and scrappy, you have to lean really heavily on understanding who you're serving. You get to know this core group of 50 people. Did I say 50? Yes, I did. People want to have 1,000 customers, but you can't handle 1,000 on day one, not even a month one, right? So you want to get to know these 50 people that represent your marketplace, get to know them intimately, not that you have to hang out with them at home, but you are interacting with them. They're interacting with your potential offer and getting feedback from them. Venture funded companies have the advantage of testing different things and trying things. You know, I think this is they have 3 programmers coding stuff all night and changing it tomorrow. That's fabulous, right? But that's money down the drain that you don't have, and nobody should be wasting money like that. We can show you some headlines about Google, Facebook, Amazon, and the verdict was that they would never make any money.
So wait, can I do this now? I'm excited.
Yeah, this is Aniyia.
This is right on time because was a tweet that a VC actually put out there this morning, and I decided to throw this into the deck because I was like, this is right on trend. Okay, so the first one was this.
Go for it.
2002, Google 7 searches for a business model. We know Google's not having any trouble making money today, right? This one, why Facebook will never make a significant profit. They might be selling your livelihood and your soul and everything about you, but they are definitely making bank doing it today. That was 2013. And then last but not least, Amazon.bomb. How the internet's success turns sour, right? Like that part at the bottom. He still believes Amazon.com will one day sell us everything. I buy so much shit on Amazon, and it's like highly problematic. I agree with a lot of the things that they do, but it is like it's impossible to live in modern society, in America at least, and not have some dependency on Amazon. Not even if you're not buying something off of Amazon, if you're watching Netflix, if you're using Pinterest, you are using Amazon because it's hosted on Amazon Web Services. Like it is for real, for real. So no one thought these companies were going to make it, but here we are.
And I want to expand on that a little bit, Aniyia. Nobody thought either. I bet you Jeff Bezos didn't know either when he started selling books that one day he was going to have Amazon Web Services. And so a part of this is that you cannot dream big enough for what your business's future is going to be. You can't plan it ahead of time. You have to take the one step in front of you and allow the market to drive your growth. If you try to have enough vision for the next 20 years, you're actually going to potentially fail even more miserably because you don't know where the market is going to be at that point in time. So just tidbit.
Real talk. And so I think you see where we're going with this. And I just like, because the icing on the cake, right? Like we get so hung up in thinking about these big, beautiful businesses that make all this money and how we want to be the person that created that business. And in the theme of dreaming big and starting small and showing that you can build anything eventually, right? Like you can't start there, got to start somewhere. Especially, by the way, like if you guys are working a job while you're launching your thing, like a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with also are like working full-time jobs or working part-time jobs. Some of them are full-time founders, but it is not required to be a full-time founder to like make your thing happen. Okay. Like I want to be really clear about that. We do not believe you have to be working on it full-time. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It worries what you are doing. So worry about yourself. Okay. So that said, let's take a little trip down memory lane. Same Google, Facebook, Netflix. Like, let's look at what their websites look like when they first launched, right? This is google.com when google.com first launched. This is Facebook when Facebook first launched, right? Like,
can you stop here 1 second? Because I laughed when I saw this. The e-Facebook for popular consumption at Harvard University.
But look, you know, they started with a need, right? Like,
right.
With Harvard, then I think they expanded it to some more universities. I joined Facebook when I was in college. I was going to Penn State. And like, it was only for college students at the time when I joined Facebook. And then it eventually opened up to like literally everyone in the world. Like, Facebook is a nation state today, okay? And it started with one university. And the website looked janky as fuck. Like, excuse me. And Amazon, oh, this design, it just hurts my soul. But this is like very 90s, you know? That said, like, you know, like everybody, you got to start somewhere, right? Like, I think the misconception is that the product has to be like amazing out of the gate, like that it has to be perfect. But like what happens to people as a result is that they spend all their energy, they spend their money, they spend their time creating a super complex, perfect thing that has to like meet the needs of all these imaginary thousands of people that they've never even talked to. But the reality is that like really only like 20% of product features are actually deal breakers, right? And that the other 80% that you're building might be what causes people not to buy your product. So, you know, building without customer feedback is related to that number one reason why businesses failed. Like, you don't find product market fit when you are not listening to your customer, right? So like, think about that. The process of building becomes much more manageable when you are willing to do that over time. So just to recap, pro tip 2, focus on getting results for your customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the things you need to do when you are building while broke. Solve a problem for a community that you are from or have meaningful access to. Do the work of deeply understanding their pain so you know how to solve it. And then the last one, which is my favorite, create strong feedback loops so that you can understand if your solution is effective. And what we mean when we say like strong feedback loops is that you make it really easy to put something out there, like make it easy for yourself to put something out there, iterate quickly, tweak and repeat, right? Like failure. Also, by the way, this is another thing that we experience when we're working with founders is that like the fear of failure is strong. Like even Francesca and I still like have to overcome our own fears, and especially like fears of failure, even though I do know on the other side of failure is usually some of the greatest things I have ever done as a consequence of that failure, but that's a sidebar. Anyway, like it's really easy to overthink and become paralyzed really by like the fear you have of putting something out there. If you feel like it's not the ultimate thing that's a part of your vision, or you don't know if people are gonna like it, or you know, you are the startup and so it's in turn putting yourself out there in a way that makes you feel very vulnerable if it's rejected. But creating strong feedback loops is really the way to help you compensate for that anxiety. It gives you more assurance and it makes your product objectively better. So you don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to be able to react to it really quickly. Every place that there is an interaction with your product, once it's out there and usable by your customers, you want to make sure that there's a way for them to give you feedback as easily and as quickly as possible, and that you are incorporating that feedback into the product and starting it again. Like that is so important.
Yeah.
Throw that one home. Sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I heard someone say before that if you love your product, you've waited too long to launch.
Oh yeah. The Reid Hoffman quote. What is it? If you're not embarrassed by your product, then you're too late. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reid Hoffman.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So pro tip number 3.
Can you hear my drum roll?
There we go. Last but not least, keep your mind sharp and don't go it alone, y'all. Your money gets right when your mind is tight. So this game of entrepreneurship is almost entirely mental. Sometimes you're going to have to like play a game of chess with yourself. This is like 80% a mental exercise and like 20% all the other like mechanics of building the business. Like we just talked about, you know, the fear of failure, and that's something that gets people hemmed up a lot. Even the most experienced people. And in fact, I would argue that if you're doing it right and you are pushing yourself and you're trying to do something innovative, like, and there is no fear, like you're probably doing something wrong. But, you know, just having clarity and focus is a superpower, right? You're doing this right, it's going to feel scary. Like even being successful might freak you out. Like sometimes we self-sabotage without realizing that we're doing it. Like we need useful routines and habits that help us consistently be good at what we do, right? And that is helped by having the right support and the right structure to save you from yourself, basically. Like I was saying, I mean, like I can't talk enough about the fear of failure. Like it is so real. I mentioned that even Francesca and I struggle with this, because the reality is if you put yourself out there in any meaningful kind of way, you will fail. Like inevitably you're going to fail, like not necessarily at like the whole thing, right? But you won't get everything right the first time, and you should expect that. And it helps when you have a community of people around you to help reframe what that means, or to help you better understand what that means, to help you not beat up on yourself, or to make you not want to give up so quickly when things don't go the way you had hoped, right? Because the reality is that life is not about winning or losing. It is about playing the long game. Mm-hmm. Like it's about staying in the game and playing the long game, and a strong community can help you do that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get some exclamation points if y'all are still listening.
We got some exclamation points. Yes, the support network is critical. You tried to go full-time 2 years ago and failed hard. There you go. More resources. Yep. Accountability. Absolutely. Yes. Exactly. All right. So here's the thing. So we talked about how between 70 and 82% of venture-backed businesses, those that actually get funded, will fail, right? And then businesses without venture backing that are bootstrapped, that's more like 50-50 chance. But did you know, and someone was asking questions earlier about franchises, franchise businesses succeed 95% of the time. And so you might be wondering, why is that? Well, because they have repeatable processes and proven systems. They charge you an arm and a leg for access to that, right? And so you end up paying royalties, and you have to buy everything from them, all of your supplies. So like McDonald's, for example, you have to buy the buns and the meat and the whatever from their suppliers, because it's economies of scale. You have to use their branding. You have to use their protocol, right? So you are basically opening your business, quote unquote, with a manual written already. This is how you succeed, because they've already done it over and over again, and they have perfected it, right? So what we want you to plug into is a network of success, of people who have proven systems and methods. You don't have to pay royalty. You don't have to owe them your life now. That's greed, right? Instead, tap into the resource and be able to replicate success through systems and processes and methods that have delivered results in the past, okay? So you can have the success rate of a franchise simply by aligning yourself with those proven systems and repeatable processes. Next slide.
So okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to wrap it up for pro tip number 3, you want to create, not wrap it up, but introduce it. You want to create a routine with effective habits, and you need to show up for yourself every day. And some of that is the mental game that Aniyia was talking about. It's actual personal habits, rhythms of your life that need to make sense, creating the physical space for your business, in your schedule, in your home, in your office, wherever that happens, clearing that space, but also those business routines and habits that have been proven to succeed, whether it's through customer discovery, prototyping, selling, growing a business, etc. There are methods and systems that have already been proven, and you want to tap into those as well. You want to add something to that, Aniyia?
Nope.
Okay. Fabulous. Allow yourself to feel fear. Like I said earlier, when I was introducing myself, I don't believe in fearlessness. the idea of not having fear to me is irrational. And I know it's just a word, and what it means is I get it. But as a coach, I want people to be intentional with their words. And something that I'm really passionate about is helping people be courageous in the presence of fear. Dig into it, understand it, know why you're afraid, and then mitigate your risk and push past it. I'm not asking you to jump off buildings and be like, I'm not scared, I could fly. No, I'm saying there's a reason why you're scared and you should acknowledge it and don't do weird shit, but still get to the first floor through other means, which is what you need to do. No need to jump off the roof, okay? A wise and safe community increases your capacity. Wives sometimes do, but a wise and safe community increases your capacity to do hard things. If you're not the only one trying to get to the first floor in a creative way, you feel more encouraged and you feel supported, and then you find people to create paths with. Okay, collaboration, we have seen it over and over and over again, is the main road to success. I used to coach on my own, and now that I'm coaching with BBS, I am thrilled, I'm excited, my brain juices flow more freely. Aniyia and I have very different perspectives, and I think that we create something amazing together because of how different we are. And so it's, collaboration, working in community with other people, so that you're not alone. So make sure you get yourself one of those.
All right, let's recap.
Yes. Stop obsessing about funding. If anything is stuck in your mind after tonight, if you're going to obsess about something else, I would say obsess about profitability and how you're going to make some money. Organic growth is the primary method. Fundability is a secondary method if it's really necessary. The number one killer of businesses is the lack of product market fit. Okay, so if there's one problem you want to solve in your business, is to make sure you're building something that people want, and that makes you different, getting your customer results to be forefront of everything you do, building strong feedback loops so that you can get feedback from your customers, and keeping your mind and routine sharp. You need support and you need structure in order to get there.
Word. Okay, so I think now this is a good time. Like, there's so much stuff that we usually also talk about that we just didn't get to touch on. I feel like we threw a lot at y'all, and you guys are still hanging in there. It's been an hour. I'm giving the fist. Stay strong. And we still have we got another 45 minutes or so. We can keep going and answer questions once we get into this final part, which is this is the part where we tell you that also, we can help you.
Yes.
And we have something for that. There's a thing for that. There's an app for that. If you want to build sustainably with what you have today, we have a solution. It is our bootstrapping bootcamp. We're helping people at the earliest stages get from idea and cross that chasm to launching and start getting their first dollars in the door. So if the product market fit required those 4 things that need to be, evident and tested, then we will help you address and validate each of those things during the bootcamp, right? This is what we want for you. We want you to be successful, right? We're on a mission to close the wealth gap for communities of color. That's what Black and brown founders exist to do. That is what our jobs are, right? And as much as it is related to helping you guys, right? That's what's important to us. We want to make sure that you have a community of people who can relate. You need thought partners and to know that you're not alone. And I'm even going to expand on this by saying that Black and brown founders actually started what we do by events. We started with doing a lot of conferences. And like I said, some of you might even know who we are because of conferences or an event that you might have attended. And part of that was to bring that community of people together and exchange information. This is a way where we want to get even closer to helping people in a way that isn't, I use the word ephemeral, but that the thing about events is that they're magical, but that once you leave the room, it's hard to maintain that connection and that spark that you felt when you were there. And this is something that we just really feel we want to get more hands-on and start helping the people in a more intentional, methodical way, and look at what you have and help you understand how that's going to get you where you're trying to go, right?
And I want to add, Aniyia, that that's part of the feedback loop, right? We would do an event and people would say, okay, so how do I stay involved? How do I do the next thing with BBF? I learned some good things. How do I keep going? And so in response to the demand, we crafted something that was matching what they were asking for. So just want to show you a live example of how you evolve your offer based on that feedback loop.
Exactly. The other thing that we want you guys to have is options. Like, we want you to use all of that time that you're spending right now trying to get a warm intro or putting together your pitch decks to, you know, try to get investors to come along. Like, use those on customers instead. Like, that is, if there was like one of the biggest regrets, like, I mean, I don't really have that many regrets from how things went with Tinsel, but I feel like one of my biggest regrets was that I should have spent more time with people who actually could be folks I was making deals with instead of people who could have invested in me. Like, if you are making good money, investors will find you. Trust. And then last but not least is the experience. Like, I think that, you know, whether you succeed or fail, everyone should have a chance. Like, anyone who has a good idea and the determination to try to build it should get the chance to do it. That is something that I personally believe. And so whether you succeed or fail, like, I think that entrepreneurship will be one of the most important, I should say, like, learning experiences that you'll ever have in your entire life. You'll learn so much about yourself, which is like the most important thing, but also about that problem that you were trying to solve, and like probably lots of ways to not go about solving it. There's also a reason why sometimes investors actually like to optimize for founders who have had something and failed before. Like, you know, when people are thinking about who they want to invest in, like, it can often be a good thing to have one or two failures under your belt, because you really understand the ways to not do something. I can pull up like probably 50 different quotes about how if you want to get successful, you should just increase the number of times that you fail.
Yes.
It's true. Like, so just be ready. Failure is going to happen. It's okay. And we're here for you if it happens. It's fine. So let's get into the bootcamp breakdown so you guys know, like, okay, we talked about a lot of stuff, but what does this look like? I'm going to kick this to Francesca to talk about this part.
Sure. So the bootcamp is an opportunity for you to learn how to do the things that we were just describing. Sometimes there is a big gap between the theory and a textbook you can find at the library for $1 and the actual practice and how do you apply it to your business. So I got to tell you that we have the different modules set up in such a way that you get to work these different concepts into your business. It always starts with you, right? And so the first part of the bootcamp is focused on self-assessment and goal setting. This is where you get to figure out, what are my skills? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What is it that I already know how to do very well? Which communities am I a part of? And we help you find your flow. And that flow is the opportunity for you to see the interaction and actually map it in our tool. And you get to kind of do your own conclusion of what it is that you can bring to that industry or that problem that you want to solve. Part 2 is understanding your market and customer. So once you've figured out you and what you are going to bring into that industry, then you're going to get really, really specific and intimate with that potential customer or that potential market for you. Learning how to create those feedback loops is the focus of part 2. Part 3, the numbers and business models, monetization strategy, what kind of business do you want to build? People don't realize that there's different models, there's different ways to make money. I tell the story that when I was in college, we used to sell bagels for our choir practice. And so at one point, for whatever reason, they told us we couldn't sell bagels anymore. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to sell napkins and you get a free bagel with it. So the business model had to change real quick, right? How you monetize changes. So that's part 3. The focus of our time together would be to really focus on how your business model, not businesses in general, but your business, how will you monetize? Part 4 is actually your prototype. is you putting something out there that people can give you feedback on. And that's why it's part 4. See, people want to jump into building something, but they have no method to the madness. We want you to be mad and a little crazy and a little out there. We just want to give you some methods and proven systems and processes that will help you increase your chances of succeeding in the midst of all the, madness that starting a business can be. The final part is actually marketing and sales strategy. So we actually take you all the way to how do you even construct your pitch, not to an investor, but to a potential customer, and how do you get in front of those initial sales. Our goal for you is that you would have some coins in your pocket by the end of the program. That obviously depends on how quickly you move through these different steps, and also how simple you keep it. We have people that come in and they still want to boil the ocean, and it's like you try to bring them down to at least a lake. And so they get down to a lake, but the lake is still kind of big. So part of this is you being coachable, and you being willing to submit to a process that has been proven and a process that can help you really get to money sooner rather than later. So those are the 5 modules of the boot camp.
And I would add to that, so this is a 10-week boot camp. It starts on September 17th. I don't know why I did not put the dates in this deck. It starts on September 17th. It goes until November 19th. And it's not a boot camp for no reason. You got to be prepared. I feel like Francesca's touching on this a little bit. You got to be prepared to put in the work. And if you follow our pace, right, for 10 weeks, it's gonna be really intense. And you can take it at your own pace if you wish as well. And just by the end of that 10 weeks, following all the steps and keeping pace, you should be launched and out there and getting started. In some cases, you gotta be ready to have your idea change. A lot of people's ideas maybe get a little bit amended, or as they discover new things about themselves, or they discover new things about their market, or they discover things about the assumptions that they were making, because a lot of this is going to be about making your assumption and then testing it to see if it's true each step along the way, and then building that thing on thing, as Francesca just mentioned it. So there's going to be some really deep, hard work that's related to yourself and understanding what it is that you're bringing to the table and what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and then understanding what the people that you want to solve that problem for are thinking and feeling and how they're acting, and then building the thing that does effectively solve that problem, and then figuring out how to market that to people so that they know you have the solution for them, and then just, jumping off the cliff, right? So we're really excited about what we've got. This is going to be our second cohort. In fact, we have to update the website, but we're going to be doing actually pre-recorded lessons, but we're going to continue to do live lessons. So your lessons will be not too dissimilar like this moment you're having with us right now, although the lessons would be a bit shorter than this webinar, where we'll be able to teach you each of the modules, and then we will have separate sessions where we do live group coaching sessions with your cohort, and then you have access to your supportive private community on our Academy platform. It is different from the kind of group Facebook group that we have. It lives in a different place, and we have a community manager who's there and listening and can help respond to your questions. Francesca and I are also there and can listen and help respond to your questions. And then you also get a workbook with all of the exercises and assignments and tools that we're going to give you to work through each section of the lessons and things that we told you, so that a result spits out on the other side, and then that is what you build on for the next step of the process, and that builds on the next step and the next step. And then of
what
course,
she said.
And of course, we've got a couple testimonials from folks that joined us in our last cohort. This is Wise from the Indie Creative Network, basically saying that he was able to be around a community of people that allowed him to learn even more. He was really challenged in the sales portion and didn't even know what he was going to provide at the time. It helped him be intentional, prioritize, and by the time we did our exit interview, he had already started to generate some revenue from his business.
So we can't see. Oh, I was going to say we can't see it yet. Okay.
Oh wait.
Go on.
Can't see what I do. Okay. I was going to just say Viva. Another one. Who said that she went in seeking clarity and having the tools to break down her business to its core, and why she was doing it, really trying to get some focus around how she was approaching what she was doing. And so she walked out of that with a lot of clarity, a lot of focus around what she was trying to do, and able to distill what it was that she was working on down to what is the most important thing that's generating revenue for my business. Because I think a lot of us also can get very bogged down in all the bells and whistles, as we said earlier, of making the thing prettier, or maybe adding an extra little bit of content here, or whatever, gonna redesign this thing. I totally fall into that trap all the time. But we really will help hold you accountable to like, what is the most important thing you could be doing right now with your time? And usually that is optimizing for what is the thing that's gonna get money for you as quickly as possible. So this experience is not free. Because it does take our time and our resources to make this program happen. The tuition for the bootcamp is $2,000. We have 20 spots available for the bootcamp. And if you apply within the next 24 hours, which I'm going to now show you the link to it. Yeah, so if you apply for the bootcamp within the next 24 hours, we will give you 10% off of that, whether you do the one-time payment of $2,000, or if you do the 3 monthly payments of $700, which ends up being $2,100. If you can do 3 times 7 and add 2 zeros at the end, you'll get 10% off of that if you apply within the next 24 hours. And if you complete your enrollment before September 10th, we'll also give you a bonus session, a bonus workshop that I did with our last cohort. This is a thing that I get usually, paid $5,000 as a speaker to come and do for other people about zebras and unicorns. And that is really to dig deeper into the mechanics of venture capital and what it looks like to build bootstrap businesses, or really optimizing for profitability, or building things that are more sustainable and socially conscious, versus the kind of typical hamster wheel of the Valley and that ethos that we talked about being somewhat destructive earlier.
I want to highlight, Aniyia, that application does not guarantee admission. So if you are interested, don't think that, it's a purchase. It really is an application. And so there is then an invitation to enroll. And that's why there's a second incentive. If you are admitted and you enroll by September 10th, then there's an additional bonus. So it is 2 different things, just to clarify.
Thank you for that. Yeah, she's totally right. Basically what happens is you click on that link, go to our application, fill out the application. The application isn't, anything too hard. It's not, a dissertation or anything. It should take you definitely less than an hour. I'd say the average person, maybe it'll take 30 minutes. Some people probably less than that. But we really are just looking for, do you have a workable idea that we can actually help you with? And in fact, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to go to the next slide, because this will tie into that. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Okay. Do you have an idea that we can actually work with you on? Are you coachable and interested in having our help? And just generally, are you committed to making sure that this thing is going to happen? Are you actually ready and willing to put in the work? So this is something that could be a really great fit for you. If you fit any of these categories, if you're tired of pitching investors, if you need to have your prototype, your first MVP done, we're going to help you get your Frankenstein prototype done. You're not clear on how to get from point A to point B, where you are right now to where you're trying to go, that you don't know when to pivot or when to iterate, or you don't know how to brand or market your idea. These are all things that we can definitely help you with and more. If you are conversely in a highly regulated industry, if your idea requires costly manufacturing, I would put emphasis on costly. We can help people who are making physical products, but as a person who has manufactured a product, if it is something that in order to get to your next point, you need a seriously large investment in getting that started up, we cannot materialize that money for you. You have to be willing to look at maybe another way to solve the problem that you're trying to solve with whatever it is that you're creating. So there's a little bit of if you have questions about that, because maybe you do need to manufacture something, you can feel free to just send us a question and we can let you know if it's something that we feel like we can help you with. I just wish that I had, but I have not cracked the nut of what it costs to manufacture a physical product. You do actually need some money for that. And then if you're already selling close to $1 million annually in revenue, like I don't think this is most people here, but this probably isn't going to be a fit for you. We are really working with people who are typically at the earliest stages of the journey, or have been like trying to get it to the launch, or maybe like have launched but have just like really gotten stuck right in that part where they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this move? Like I said, if you don't believe that you don't believe in coaching, or you don't want your idea, the way that you're going about what you're doing right now to have to change, probably not a fit. But otherwise, like, let's do this, right? Like, if you're going to put in an application, I want to see some exclamation points. Like, can you guys just like an exclamation point if you think you're going to put in an application? That would make me so happy.
So in the process, some people do have some questions, and we knew that it was going to come up. How are we different from boot camps, incubators, and accelerators? Well, I'll tell you immediately.
Don't answer her question. I want to make sure that I can mark this on, oh wait, this is on the side chat versus in the
Yes, it's on the side chat. So one question is about boot camps and the other one is on individual coaching. So let me tell you more about how we're different and what we do with individual coaching. So, specifically accelerators, typically an accelerator is also a form of an investor, and they will take a percentage ownership in your company. Right? Whether it's 2 or 3%, it's usually modest, but they still take ownership in your company in order to allow you to go through their training program. We do not take any kind of ownership. We do not want stakes in your business. We want to give you a service that you can purchase and consume, and we want to give you an eternal community that you can be part of. Right? So the community is evergreen. We give that to you in exchange for a fee. And it's a one-time fee that you pay for the boot camp, and then you're still part of the community for as long as you want to be part of it. That's how we're different from accelerators. An incubator sometimes is a place where you can purchase, literally a physical place, right? Like a co-working space. And that happens at colleges and universities, or there are other organizations like an Echoing Green or something like that, that also don't take ownership necessarily in your company, but they are with you for a period of time. Okay, we are similar to an incubator. We consider ourselves differently because we are a community. We're not here to incubate a business in particular. We are here to provide community for entrepreneurs of color. Okay, so that's how we are similar to an incubator, but different. And when it comes to other boot camps, I don't know right now of another boot camp that is created by and for Black and brown entrepreneurs, with all the implications that has as far as goals of a business, how you measure success, and the type of community that we are creating. So are there other boot camps out there? For sure, that can also help you? Absolutely. Can they do it the way we do it? We would like to think that we have a formula that works for entrepreneurs of color that are more aligned with our social cultural aspirations and with our way of doing business. So that's how I can answer that question. Does that answer or address your concern? I'm going to kill your name, Heron.
Yeah, I also want to add to the answer to Heron's question, which is just to say that like we also are friends with a few of the folks who have some bootcamp programs that may or may not be specifically marketed to underrepresented founders, but do have a community of folks who are underrepresented and are underrepresented themselves. For example, Mandela, who has Founder Gym, who is amazing and I think is about to have a baby, but she has done such an incredible job teaching people what to do if you want to get money from investors. If your goal is to I am going to raise this round, like that is what I want to do. This is what I was made to. This is what my business is for. Like I am the fit and I want to do, like Mandela Founder Gym is definitely the move. If you want to really raise money from investors, like our bootstrapping boot camp is not going to spend much time prepping you for that. So you might want to check out that. Yes, shout out to Founder Gym. I love Mandela. Also, like Tara Reid is another good friend of ours. In fact, you'll see her on our podcast, and she's been a speaker at most of the events that we've done. She has a boot camp for building apps without code. if your specific interest is to build an actual app that you want to launch and make money from, like Tara is definitely your girl. Danielle Leslie, also amazing, another friend of ours who's spoken at our events. She's specifically focused on helping people make courses. In fact, I have worked with Mandela. I have worked with Danielle in like I've used some of her stuff in my kind of structure on the back end of how we created our first launch. So there have been a lot of really beneficial things. If you're thinking specifically about like online course business, like her thing is specifically tailored toward that. I think you'll find that there are going to be some similar advice and things, that patterns, some trends you're going to see in terms of maybe some of the things that we figured out. But actually I would think of it just like, you know, you're going to go and work with a personal trainer to like get your muscles stronger or whatever, right? Like there's going to be a different approach that every trainer is going to do to help you get the results that you're looking for. They're going to have different personalities. People are going to be stronger in one thing, weaker in maybe another thing. It depends on what you're looking for. And most importantly, if you want to get results, you still have to put in the work. Like, I think that the biggest thing is that you got to bring yourself and a willingness to really get in there and make it happen. That's going to be true across all programs. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Yep, he said yes.
Of course,
that was good. Then another question that came up was how much individual coaching do cohort members receive? So Aniyia and I are both moms and we have lives. I specifically, who do the individual coaching, I have 3 beautiful teen daughters, 2 that are learning how to drive. I don't have enough time to do individual coaching for 20 people during the boot camp, but I can take 5. Okay. So if you're interested in doing individual coaching, it's actually an additional fee to do individual time with me on a weekly basis for the 10 weeks. Okay. So if that's what you want, then you definitely have that. I want to encourage you guys, if you're considering the boot camp, 2 things. 1, definitely consider the opportunity to do one-on-one coaching with me. For sure, it's an opportunity for you to get super individualized attention on a weekly basis to make sure that your business is moving in the right direction. However, you also have either weekly or like per module, and you'll see that when you sign up for the program, you will have assignments, things that you're working on a regular basis, right? And they're kind of deliverables. They're, you know, things that you want to complete along the way. You have a community where you get to post that assignment. If you want feedback from Aniyia or I on those assignments, that's where you go. You post them there, and we will give you personalized feedback. It'll be just within the group, because a lot of times it's the same questions. A lot of times other entrepreneurs in your cohort will actually have either gone through it or have more insight or be able to contribute to the questions that you might have. So you have that as part of being in the boot camp. You have each other and the community and assignments that you get to do as a group. Well, you get to do it on your own, but you get to work with the group to get the feedback. And if you want individual feedback, you can get it from Aniyia and I through the platform. And if you want one-on-one individual coaching, that is an upsell. Is an opportunity for you to add that, I should say, as an add-on. So it's something you can add to your registration.
Yeah, and the add-on for one-on-one coaching, if Francesca didn't already say this, because I was just checking the questions to make sure I was paying attention, is 10, like you still get actually the 10 weeks of group coaching that you can participate in as well. But in addition to that, you'll get 10 45-minute weekly sessions one-on-one with Francesca, and that is for an additional $1,000. 10 sessions, 45 minutes each, 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Was that all the questions we had in the sidebar? Because I want to make sure I answer the questions that people wrote in here too. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the ask a question box. I'm going to just start going down this list really quickly to answer what we have here. So the first question that I see is, how does this product market strategy relate to unlearning the white supremacist characteristic of quantity over quality? Oh, girl, don't get me started on that.
Well, can I answer this one?
A whole other webinar. So I think that there is this really gets back to kind of like methodologies and beliefs, and to the previous conversation we were just having with you guys about, style of trainer in the that you're working with to strengthen your startup muscles. I think that you might want to consider how people think about, their worldviews and how that comes into how they encourage people to build startups. In our mind, because of, the fact that we are a very socially conscious organization, we are a nonprofit, and our goal is to help close the wealth gap. We are both interested in helping people make money, but we are interested in doing that in a way that is going to be both sustainable for them and good for the ecosystem at large. I think that there's a lot of conversation we can have about how capitalism in general, which I do think is very much rooted in some white supremacist ideologies, can be used to benefit people of color. Actually, Francesca started this session by saying that she believes entrepreneurship is a form of activism. In our minds, I think we think of it in terms of there's one way where you think of it in terms of, how do you kind of Robin Hood this, right? We're going to take this information that all the people who you see that are living the dream at the top, and the things that they do, and the way that this world works, and you can make a decision about whether you want to navigate it that way, or you can make a decision about whether you want to do it differently. So I think that we believe in quality over quantity. We believe in cooperation and collaboration over competition in many ways. And a lot of the things that you'll hear us talk about when we coach as well is not only are there ways to innovate, but there are ways to innovate which can be non-disruptive when you really think about the ways in which we make assumptions about how a market works and what the people who are your perceived competition are doing, and how you want to deliver your service to provide better. So that is a long-winded way to say that it relates in a lot of ways. We will probably not specifically tackle that head on, but it is very much present in the methodology and the ethos that Francesca have and how we teach.
Can you repeat the question? Because I thought it was so eloquent. I want to hear it again.
Yeah. How does this product market strategy relate to unlearning the white supremacist characteristic of quantity over quality?
Mm-hmm. So something I introduced in the last cohort, and I'm still chewing on it because I'm thinking it's either going to be a blog post or maybe even a full-blown book. I'm always thinking I'm going to write a book. I think I need a boot camp for book writers. But the way of the colonizer, and I know Michelle was in here somewhere and she could probably do some high-fiving on the chat. The way of the colonizer is the way of eternal expansion, right? It's a world where there are no resource limitations and it's all mine. All that is mine. We don't live that way, and we don't practice those beliefs, and we don't teach that. And that is one of the reasons why the idea of building $1 billion enterprise for the benefit of venture capitalists does not jive with us. At least that is my reason why, other than it doesn't work. It is very important for me as a coach in residence and director of education at Black and Brown Founders that we teach principles and values that align with who we are as a people, and things that can be sustained both in my body. I'm not going to out. I don't believe in having to work 100 hours a week to get a business off the ground. If you're working that hard, you're not working smart, right? So I have to sustain it in my body. I have to sustain it within my family. And family is defined by you. It could be your group of friends. It could be you and your children, your spouse, whatever that is. That always comes first. That is what sustains us. And so if we're destroying the thing that sustains us, we are dying. There's also the social impact piece. And for some people, that is the importance of the environment and making sure that, their footprint and their carbon footprint and all of that. But for other people, it's people, right? Am I creating jobs in the community? Am I developing economic sustainability for a group over time? Am I leaving a legacy for my family? That can look different for different people. I do believe, and if anybody has heard my talk you can find it on YouTube, or you could, just talk to me offline or something. But I also do believe that as people of color living in the United States who have jobs and have roofs over their head, we're already in the top 5% in the world. So we have a responsibility to use our business for good. and to make sure that we are using the opportunity of creating business to solve the right problems. So I can go on and on about how important it is for us to build businesses our way. I know. I think it's happening. It's happening. It's just a little. So let's see. I can't see here who asked that question, but let me tell you that is why we are different from other programs. You're not going to hear these words come out of other people's mouths in other programs that are not sensitive to these things. So,
all right. Answered question. Next question. What are tips to get intimate with customers? I have about 160 and I'm putting together a learning plan now. I feel like I need more information. I think maybe if I'm going to answer the question I think you're asking, Orion, which is like, how do you kind of really get into the minds of your customers? Thanks for coming, Julianne.
Yes.
Yeah, which is how do you get into the minds of your customers and do that customer discovery? One of the methods that we kind of do with the boot camp, what is the most popular one, excuse me, is through doing like surveys. But I personally think that you'll get something more effective typically when you actually talk to them in real life or do like a phone call. So in the boot camp, like this is the second module, if I'm remembering correctly, which is going to really be intentional on the customer discovery part. Like if you guys didn't get that from like the previous hour and a half of us talking, like the customer discovery part and knowing your customer is like really a key piece. Like it's critical in the entire thing of what you're trying to do. And so there's a lot of recommendations that we can make around like what might be the most effective way for you to collect that information from who you are trying to serve. I think it kind of depends, but generally we are looking at interviews or surveys. And what's also just really, really important there is that like when you're crafting those, you're asking the right questions. That is important. The vehicle is probably less important than like what you're actually putting in front of the people. And that's something that we can help you with too. Did you have anything to add to that, Franchi?
So repeat the question, please.
What are tips to get intimate with customers?
Mm-hmm. So the way I would answer that is it depends on the client. And what I mean by that, I think that ultimately what you want is that feedback loop, right? You want an effective two-way street where you put something out there, they speak back to you. If you're talking about kids, right? If you're creating, I don't know, sneakers for 5-year-olds, the way you get information from a 5-year-old using sneakers is different than you would from a 90-year-old trying to get sneakers on. The requirements they have, and this is going to sound horrible, but like the natural habitat is different. And so the context of that experience is different. Sometimes it's observation, sometimes it's actual engagement. Sometimes you don't want to interrupt the process and you want to data without your presence. Sometimes it is your presence that is necessary through, an actual physical intervention, like a questioning or a focus group or whatever. I want to kind of give you guys a quick insight into Aniyia and I. I'm the engineer, she's the artist. And so I put everything in boxes and in formulas and I color code everything. Aniyia makes it pretty, makes it palpable for humans, because apparently I'm more of a machine language person. And so when you ask a question, typically you're going to get like a sciencey answer and then like something you can do something with from Aniyia. So just, that anybody is interested in how this works in the actual boot camp. I think a lot about design of experiments is where I was going with this little rant of mine. And design of experiments for me is very important. Sometimes the way you're collecting feedback is part of the experiment itself. Other times it's just a focus group. Other times it really is just a survey. There's a lot that we do with testing assumptions in the boot camp. And so crafting the questions right is something that I really worry about. I am the scientist in that way, trying to make sure that we're accurate with all of that. So I guess what I'm saying is the boot camp answers that question. And I can't answer it that briefly.
That might have been a very non-satisfying answer, Orion, mostly because it's like, it depends. But that is something that we would be happy to help you with. Okay, and next question, also by Orion. Oh, okay. Which is basically him saying that if you're commuting and you are concerned about the recording getting cut off, or you have not been able to watch this live, yes, there is going to be a recording at this very destination. Once this webinar ends, Crowdcast is going to do its magic in the background, and then a recording of this will live right here, and you'll even be able to see the entire chat history of what happened during the course of this call as well. Last but not least question I have is, when we say people, is there a good target number of customers? I've heard 1,000. I've also heard it measured in return customer rate, looking for 30 to 50%. I think he's looking for like more statistics around like what's the right number of customers to have and how much like repeat business you should expect. That is also going to depend on the business, but I'll let Francesca stab at this and then I'll.
Sure. 110% dependent on your business model. Okay. If you're selling airplanes, chances are there aren't 1,000 different people buying airplanes, 727s or 777s, whatever, today in the market. So it really depends on your product, on the complexity of your product, and the kind of mass appeal that you are building. So 1,000 customers, if you're selling to businesses, that's 1,000 businesses that need to buy from you. I can tell you, I run a coaching practice. I cannot possibly handle more than 100 clients a year. Okay. And that's my business model because of how I choose to operate. But at 100 clients, I do pretty well for myself. Okay. So every business will have a different threshold. And that's why we build bootstrap businesses instead of the big $1 billion ideas and whatnot. Because think of even a coffee shop, right? A coffee shop down the street, potentially, they'd be thrilled to have 1,000 customers every day, but they probably don't get 1,000 customers on a daily basis. So I think that when you say 1,000 customers, I would need to understand, is that a year per month? Is that 1,000 new customers every month? Is that repeat rate, like you were mentioning? To take off, you probably need anywhere from like 10 to 25. It's really not that deep. And then beyond that, we can talk about growth. And what number you want to grow to. You can grow not indefinitely, but you can grow very, very large. So I want to be able to answer that question, but I would need to be working with your business specifically so we can put some numbers that make sense for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to pile on to that to basically say that what we will do in the very beginning of the bootcamp, when we talked about kind of doing self-assessment, part of what that self-assessment is around like your skill sets and all of that stuff and what you're working on and the relationship between those two things. The other thing that we do force you to do, because this is very important, is to kind of find what is we call it like your ideal day, is how we frame it. But generally it is to define what your point B is, right? So like if the entire experience of building a company is to achieve something for yourself, independence, stability for your family, whatever that is, like whatever your motivation is, there is a reason why you would do this crazy bleak business of building a company, because it's hard. It's probably one of the hardest things that you'll ever do, and you shouldn't just do it for fun. You should do it because you're going to gain something out of it at the end. And so you defining what that is like a really important part of it. And then we work backward from that in relationship to what your idea is, how you're thinking about structuring your offering, how you're looking at your price point, how you're looking at the delivery of that service. And we try to reconcile, or at least help you reconcile all of those different things, so that like if it's something that demands, I'm just making this up, if you need $100,000 annually to make your business be what you want it to be for what you've outlined, then and you have constraints that do not allow you to do that by getting 1,000 people to pay you $100, then we will maybe help you rework, for example, like that, where maybe you actually only need 5 customers to pay you $20,000. And that maybe getting that 5,000 customers is much easier. Sorry, 5,000. 5 customers is much easier than getting 1,000 customers, even though the other customers are paying a far more premium kind of price. So there's a lot there, and it really depends on the math around what your goals are, and how you're thinking about it, and how you want your business to grow, and what your business can sustain in terms of your capacity for runway. Because as our friend Tara says, like, you don't want to be broke too long.
I want to say something here to everybody. You will come, and not just to this boot camp, but into any learning experience, you will come with previously learned information. And what I want you to understand is that some things, which you probably do, but I want to state it for the sake of this conversation, some things are true with a big T, like they are truths that stand like the sun shows up every morning, right? So some things are true with a big T. Other things are true with a small t, meaning they're true sometimes. They're true for specific circumstances. They were true for Mark Zuckerberg, but they're not true for you, or they might not be true in this instance, right? So be cautious when you are consuming content out there, that you're not assuming that their truth is true for you, and that because it happened to work for someone else in a certain way, that's how it's going to work for you. This boot camp and the work that we do is tailored to you. That's why we only take 20 students. I want to take on more, and Aniyya's like, we can't, because we need to give them enough time in the hot seat every week to apply this to their individual business. So it's important for us. We're very intentional about the fact that these concepts are not just theoretical, they need to be applied, and each business is going to look different. It has to, in order to succeed. So, I don't know exactly the question, not the question, but the source of the information that you had regarding the 1,000 customers or how it applies. But I would challenge you to say, you know what, that sounds interesting. Let me see how that would be true for my business.
Yeah. And I do actually, you just reminded me of one more thing that I want to say before we kind of like close out here, which I think we're kind of like on our last slide. I haven't seen any new questions come in. But that is that Francesca and I will serve as like what I think is a great phrasing of it is like your thought partners. It ends up kind of really being some hybrid of like a coach and a consultant, if you will. Whereas a coach typically is one like charged with really just like not telling you what to do, but really just trying to surface the things that you want to do by, asking you questions or getting you to dig deeper into what it is that you're doing. But what we find is that, people do actually want us to help them along with our own recommendations and what we would do. And so we try to obviously not, be overbearing about what is the way that we would go about solving that. But when people are looking for a little bit of help or some ideas, we do try to throw those in there, which are kind of like in a little bit more in the vein of a consultant that you would pay to do a specialized set. Because a lot of the things that people struggle with are things that we are very strong at or have done many, many times. And us telling them how we would solve the problem is useful. So we try to like really toe that line in a very respectful way of both like getting you to surface what your own desires and what you have, and also helping you make some strategic recommendations. Cool. Anyone have anything else? Yeah. Like Francesca said, if you're ready to get down and in the weeds and like all of the things with us, apply for the bootcamp today. Application
That's right.
close on September 10th to join cohort 2. And before I forget, we're also going to be doing office hours. So Francesca and I will be holding office hours, not too dissimilar from what this last 45 minutes or so of this webinar have been like, where you can ask us questions. You can specifically ask us questions about the bootcamp, any open-ended things you might have. We will share that through an email with you guys who attended here today, but basically we'll be just chopping it up on a Zoom meeting that'll be an open room, and people can just show up, pop in, pop out, ask a question, stay for the whole time if you want. We'll just be there and ready and willing to answer your questions, whatever they might be. The first one is going to be this Thursday from 3 to 5. And the second one will be on Tuesday, September 10th from 3 to 5 as well. So thank you guys for your time. This has been awesome. Thank you for listening. And I hope you guys have a great evening and get to eat ice cream and chicken nuggets for dinner like Francesca was talking about in her example earlier.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye.